About 6 months ago, I set out on a quest to find the best wings in the United States of America. I asked for suggestions for places I should go, and you guys came through. I now have a list of over 200 suggestions. Kinda overwhelming, to be honest with you. So I devised a plan, a systemized approach, if you will. I divided the US up into 12 mini regions, and starting today, I'll be trying wings in each of those regions until I can confidently say that I've had the best wings in the country. And in this episode of the Studio Review, I'm starting with New England. I'm just gonna say this right off the bat. I know some people are gonna be upset about my regions. State identity is very important to people, and you know that if you've ever met someone from Maryland or Ohio. But you guys, there's literally a Wikipedia page listing all the different ways you can divide the US into regions, and everybody does it differently. The Census Bureau, the Federal Reserve, the courts, the clocks, economists. It's out of control, but not New England. That's one region that basically everyone can agree on. And I'm a big fan of New England. I used to live there. I just think it's one of the coolest places. There are 6 states in New England: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut. I know New York is nearby, but it's definitely not New England, and I'll probably dedicate an entire episode of this series to New York since so many of the suggestions I got were for places in Buffalo. For this leg of my quest, I basically went on a 2-day wing bender. The plan was for day 1 to include Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine, and for day 2 to wrap up with New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut. And at the end of this video, I'll crown a winner for the New England region. I didn't plan for this, but day 1 happened to be National Chicken Wing Day, and I started that day going to Wendell's pub in Norton, Mass. And you might be wondering how I selected the places I'm going to. The reality is I'm not going to get to every single wing place, so I apologize if I don't get to your suggestion, but I cross-referenced viewer suggestions with lists from food critics and readers' choice polls. Wendell's was suggested by Richard Willett on YouTube, so shout out Richard. And it was also featured on several lists I saw for the best wings in Massachusetts. First thing I would say about Wendell's is that the vibes are phenomenal. Unfortunately, vibes do not influence the final score of the wings. Pretty quickly I realized it was a cash-only establishment, but fortunately they had an ATM there so I could get charged twice. You know how like the ATM charges you and then your bank also charges you? Anyways, on their menu they claim to be the king of wings. And they don't have different flavors, just different levels of spice. You're only allowed to get 1 sauce per order, so I got an order of the regular or sassy or classic wings with some of the suicidal sauce on the side. And here's a good place to mention, my initial plan was to order 3 different sauces at each restaurant that I visited. That would include the classic buffalo, the spiciest sauce, and just a 3rd fun flavor. But with just the sheer amount of wings I'm gonna need to eat and the limitations set by some restaurants, I'm having to adjust that slightly. So I'm making sure that I get the classic buffalo at every single restaurant I visit, and I'll order the spiciest wing on the menu at least once per video. So don't worry, it's coming. And a quick reminder on my ranking system. So the wings will be ranked across 5 categories on a scale of 1 to 10 for a total score out of 50. The first category is appearance/first impression, and I gotta say the presentation was amazing. The waitress brought the wings out in 2 wooden bowls, one on top of the other, and she shook them really hard and then flipped it over and shook them again right by my table. It's like getting tableside guac. They were steaming, so clearly hot out of the fryer, and the smell was really good, but they looked, I guess, like a little scraggly. So I'll give them an 8 out of 10, which leads me into meatiness/size. These things were very small, and I was hopeful that the taste would make up for the size. They weren't very meaty either, so 6.5 out of 10. For texture, these things were very crispy, like almost dry, 7 out of 10. And my first impression of the sauce flavor is that it was like almost bland. So I made sure to try the suicidal sauce as well, which was good. It was definitely tasty, but not all that spicy. To be fair, again, I didn't order the spiciest wings, but I don't know if it merits the name suicidal. I would describe the sauces as like more oily than creamy. 7.5 out of 10. And for my overall experience of the wings, I'll go 8 out of 10. I enjoyed the wings for sure. I would just say the particular style was not for me. So Wendell's got a total score of 37 out of 50. I hate that a cool local place got a similar score to a chain like Quaker Steak and Lube, which as a reminder got 38 out of 50. But scores aside, I do think that if I had an opportunity to choose between a chain and a local restaurant, I'd choose the local restaurant every time. Next, it was time to head to Providence, Rhode Island, where I stopped at Great Northern Barbecue. According to the internet, the undisputed champ of wings in Rhode Island is a place called Boneheads, but they recently closed their doors for good. Great Northern Barbecue was suggested by a viewer and was also on a list for best wings in Rhode Island. Shout out to Ray Parento for the suggestion. Fun vibes, I would say, like there was a cool outdoor seating area, and the interior was themed with dark wood. There There was a thick smell of barbecue as soon as I walked in, so I was a little curious if they'd serve buffalo wings or just barbecue. The menu said they had 5 flavors to choose from, and none of them were called buffalo. But the waitress told me that the hot sauce wing is most similar to a traditional buffalo. She also said the sticky sweet is their most popular, so I got half a pound of each. According to the internet, Great Northern brines their wings first and then smokes them for 3 to 4 hours. The wings came out very quickly, and for appearance, I'd give them a 9.5 out of 10. These things looked delicious. The sauce did look a little painted on or plasticky, like I'm not sure how else to describe it, but that's the only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10. Definitely on the fancier end rather than like the grubbier end, if that makes sense. Also served with house-made pickles and slaw. Okay, for size, 9.5 out of 10. These were really big wing sections, very meaty. My second barbecue wing was probably the biggest wing I've ever eaten. And for texture, I'll go 7 out of 10. Not as crispy as I like on the outside, but still very tender. Okay, now for the sauce flavor. It's really hard to describe, but I'm gonna try. This is not like a Frank's Red Hot buffalo wing. Frank's Red Hot might be an ingredient, I don't know, but that just isn't the dominant flavor. They tasted smoky, which was a really nice touch. But there was another really strong flavor that I couldn't put my finger on. I thought maybe like an herb at first. As a side note, the ranch was delicious, probably also house-made. I had some coleslaw to cleanse my palate and then tried the barbecue. And the barbecue wings were good, they were sweet, but they had that same dominant flavor. I tried the sauce in isolation and my best guess was some sort of fruit, like maybe fig or something like that. I asked the waitress who asked the kitchen, who said that what I was probably tasting was the heavy molasses, but they also used pineapple juice. So my rating for sauce flavor was 6.5 out of 10, and I think I know cognitively that these are fancier wings than anything else I've had so far on this quest, but I would just say overall I didn't really love the style personally. So overall experience, I'd say 7 out of 10. Good wings, just not my cup of tea. So the total score is 39.5, which actually makes them the new front runner. And next it was time to drive up to Maine, where things took a wild turn.
I hope you guys know that when I'm not eating wings or doing eating challenges, I really do care about eating well, and that's why I'm excited to partner with Factor, the sponsor of this video. Factor delivers chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. Look, if I'm getting wings or ordering takeout back home, I'm waiting 10, 15, 20 minutes for food. But with Factor, meals are fresh and never frozen, so they're ready in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes! It's perfect for people with busy lifestyles who still want to have something nutritious on hand. And it's super customizable. You can choose the number of meals you get per week, and you can even pick out the specific meals that you'll be getting. You can also skip a week if you need to. There's a quote I read recently that says you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And let me tell you, Factor is a great system to have, because it's hard to justify eating out when I know the fridge is stocked with quality meals. And they only use ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best, which is something I'm not sure I'll be able to say after eating nothing but wings for 2 days straight. But Factor is hooking you up. They want to give you 50% off your first box when you use code REVIEW50. So head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code REVIEW50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's REVUE50.
You guys, not even Factor could have prepared me for the situation that was waiting for me in Maine. I was looking for Willy's Ale Room in Acton, Maine, which was suggested by John Roy on YouTube and also featured on several lists. So it's getting late, I'm driving through what feels like the middle of nowhere, and the only sign of life I see is a Renaissance fair, and even that was empty, there wasn't anyone there. So you can imagine my surprise when I eventually get to Willy's Ale Room, and it is packed. Like, I think half the population of Maine was there. So I go inside, I'm thinking I might need to wait for a table, but I'm still good because I have an hour before they close. The sign says seat yourself, so I go take a casual lap and eventually find a seat where a waitress tells me they're not taking any more orders. And immediately I'm confused. I'm like, oh, did you guys close at 8 instead of 9? And she's like, no, we're just not taking any more orders. And I'm like, would it change anything if I told you that I drove all the way from Virginia to try these wings? And she's like, nope. Come back tomorrow. And I didn't say this at the time, but I can't come back tomorrow because tomorrow I need to be in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut. I started to leave thinking that I came all this way for nothing when I decided to ask another waitress. And that interaction was much more hopeful. She was like, oh, I don't think we stopped taking orders. Who told you that? So she goes to check and unfortunately gets the same answer. Kitchen is closed. No more orders. So I try to plead my case. Drove from Virginia, quest for the best wings, yada yada. And she points to this guy in a collared shirt and says, you can ask Joe. And as that's happening, a third waitress comes up and is like, what does he want? And the second waitress explains I'm trying wings in every state, and the third waitress turns to me and goes, well, the kitchen's closed, come back tomorrow. And internally I'm like, yes, I've been made aware of this. But instead I just say, gotcha, and I wait for Joe. Joe is currently handling an angry customer, which takes about 5 minutes, and I'm starting to think that Joe might not be in such a great mood by the time he gets to me. But eventually the customer leaves and I plead my case with Joe. Like, maybe there are some wings that would otherwise get thrown away. And he's like, will you be here tomorrow? Unfortunately, I have to be in New Hampshire tomorrow. Finally, he's like, how many do you need? Like 10? And I'm like, Joe, I would take 1 or 2 wings if you have any to spare. Joe says he's gonna go back and check with the kitchen, but he thinks they might be physically out of wings. Joe's gone for another 5 minutes, and I keep wavering between hope and despair. Eventually, he comes back with 2 wings in a to-go box, and he's like, here, take these. And I'm like, Joe, thank you so much. Can I pay you for them? And he's like, nope, you're good to go. So I took them to my car and rated them there. Joe, if you're watching this, you're my hero. Thank you. So the wings Joe gave me were their buffalo wings that were ranked 5 out of 10 on their heat scale. But they also have 30 other wing sauces. Appearance / first impression, I'm going 9 out of 10. I mean, they looked great. They smelled great. Some slight charring, which I like. You don't want your wing to be the exact same color all the way around. Meatiness / size, I'm going 9 out of 10. I mean, great size, a lot of meat. For texture, I'll go 8 out of 10. There was a good crisp to them, and they were tender, just maybe a little bit chewy. The meat was juicy, which is a good thing. For sauce flavor, I'll go 9 out of 10. There was a great tang and a good amount of spice and flavor. So overall experience of the wings, I'm going 9 out of 10. These were really good wings, and I would definitely come back if I'm ever in the area. So Willy's Ale Room came in at 44 out of 50, which means we have a new front runner by a long shot. And that wrapped it up for day 1. On day 2, let me just say, beautiful day. It was sunny and a little bit on the cooler side, just like a great day for driving through New England. So I headed to the Stark House Tavern in Weare, New Hampshire, which has been selected as the viewer's choice for the best wings in New Hampshire for several years by a local ABC station. The place did not look like I thought it would on the outside, but the inside was fun. I got there within 30 minutes of them opening, and it was already pretty packed. The waitress said the Triple Play had won first place in New Hampshire for several years, so I got an order of those, and then 5 of the classic buffalo, and as promised, 5 of their spiciest wings. The sauce was called the Boo Boo, which I was told makes people cry. Price does not factor into the score, but I was impressed that it was only a little over $1 a wing. My first impression was that they looked good. I mean, the Triple Play wings looked amazing. The Boo Boos made me cough just from breathing nearby, so always a good sign. 9 out of 10. For meatiness / size, I'll go 8.5 out of 10. I mean, the drums were definitely bigger than the flats and a few bare spots. Now for texture, I'll go 9 out of 10. There was a great crisp to them and pretty tender too. The Triple Play especially have that nice char on the outside. Now for the sauce flavor, the buffalo is good. I would say nothing mind-blowing, but pretty solid, so I was thinking 7.5. But after trying the Triple Play, I was like, holy cow, these are 9.5 caliber wings. So I decided to meet in the middle with an 8.5. They were like a smoky sweet barbecue, and I think I was getting some hints of maple as well. And now for the Boo Boos, the spicy boys. I dove right in, and there's typically a delayed effect for these types of things, so I just went straight into the second wing too. And I was thinking to myself, okay, still going strong. I mean, it stings a little bit, but nothing too crazy. And at this point, I made it my goal to make it through all 5 of these wings without any water. But pretty quickly, it started to set in. There's something about introducing oxygen to the system that makes it burn worse. I guess that's true for fire too. Anyways, here's me wiping snot off my upper lip and sweat off of my brow. But don't worry, I tried to be careful around my eyes. And at this point, it was like full on burning, but I would say not the worst I've ever experienced. I was determined not to cry though, which was a real possibility. And phew, I did it. All 5 wings without any water. I went ahead and rewarded myself with some celery and blue cheese. And then I dove into the water as the afterburn really started to set in. My upper lip was a little raw where I'd wiped my nose with the napkin, but other than that, I feel like I escaped unscathed. For my overall experience of the wings, I'll go 9 out of 10. I think the Triple Play were my favorite wings of the trip so far. And that brings Stark House Tavern to a 44 out of 50, tied with Willy's Ale Room. Next up was Vermont, and Vermont, I have a bone to pick with you. The only viewer suggested place is now permanently closed, and as best as I can tell, no food critics are ranking wings in Vermont. I mean, I found one Reader's Choice poll that picked wings over as the best wing in the state for like 10 years running, and that's a chain. Now, in Vermont's defense, it did look like there were some good places up in Middlebury and Burlington, but I had to stick to the southern portion of the state just so that I could make it down to Connecticut before the final restaurant closed. So I settled on the Valley View Saloon in West Dover, Vermont. Based on signs at the restaurant that said stuff like no ski boots inside, I deduced that it was probably close to a ski area, and it honestly seemed a little more legit than I expected from the website. And again, I've just been surprised at how packed these places have been. I was there around 3:45 in the afternoon and it was almost full. I decided to mix it up and sit outside since I hadn't been able to do that yet on this trip. There were some picnic tables in this nice seating area right beside a creek. It was 67 degrees out, which was a really nice change from the 88-degree weather I had just left in Virginia. They only have 3 different wing sauces, and both the small portion and the large portion come with 1 flavor, so I went with buffalo. First impression was 8 out of 10, probably the most sauce that I've seen on wings this trip, which I like. And that 9 out of 10 for size, looking pretty good. And for texture and tenderness, I would say 9 out of 10. I mean, surprisingly crispy on the outside and really tender on the inside. And for sauce flavor, I had to go 7.5. I mean, it was tasty, but like nothing special. It reminded me of the Sweet Baby Ray's buffalo sauce that you can get at the store. Definitely strong notes of butter. Overall experience, I went 8 out of 10. Very solid wings, and I would come here if I lived in southern Vermont. Total score was 41.5 out of 50. Not bad, not mind-blowing. And for my last stop, I scooted down to J. Timothy's Tavern in Plainville, Connecticut. Okay, stop 6 of 6. Getting pretty sick of wings, but I'm sure it's gonna be great. The parking lot was packed, and I was worried that it might be a repeat of the Maine situation. Oh my gosh. Are these people all here for J. Timothy's? I know it's pronounced J. Timothy's, but for some reason I kept referring to it as J. Timothy's in my head, which was cracking me up. Outside of the places in Buffalo, I think this was my most suggested restaurant. I guess I didn't realize that this was like an old historic building, but they said that it opened as a tavern in 1789. And for some reason they decided to use papyrus font, so we were not off to a good start. I got a seat upstairs where I had a view of a Women's World Cup game and the Sox game, because, you know, New England. And I also had a cool view of downstairs. According to their menu, they've been named among the top 5 wings in the country by the Food Network and the second best wing in the country by the Daily Meal. So the wings here are unique because of a method they pioneered called dirt style, which means they're fried, sauced, and then fried again and sauced again. It makes the wings caramelized and slightly crispier. They don't split flavors and they don't really do spicy wings, so I got an order of the original buffalo, dirt style, and an order of the sweet red chili. It was not cheap, but that's showbiz, baby. All right, for appearance / first impression, 9 out of 10. I would say a lot of sauce, like at Valley View Saloon, but a little more variation in color. They looked good, they smelled good, and they came out of the kitchen super fast. I just gotta imagine they are cranking through these things back there. For meatiness / size, I went 8.5 out of 10. Good size, but also some runts in there. All right, for texture, there's no doubt about it. These are really good wings. They're definitely on the crispy side, but they're nowhere near as like scorched as the wings at Wendell's. I liked them. Pretty tender, but not the juiciest wings from the trip. So I went 9 out of 10. The sauce flavor was a little bit harder to put my finger on. They weren't very tangy, and I know they don't claim to make super spicy wings, but I thought they could use a little more heat. At first I thought my taste buds might just be a little bit dulled after that super spicy sauce that morning, but I later found out that ketchup is one of the ingredients in their sauce. Bold strategy, which that wasn't a dominant flavor, but to me that explains why it wasn't all that spicy. I really liked the way the caramelization permeated the entire wing. Like on some wings you kind of just get the flavor on the outside and then it's like plain chicken on the inside, but not with these. The menu said the sweet red chili were going to be spicier than the other ones, but again, wasn't super impressed with the spice. To me, they just tasted sweet. For sauce flavor, I'm going 9.5 out of 10. And for overall experience, another 9.5. So after eating somewhere in the ballpark of 60 wings in under 32 hours, J. Timothy's came in with a final score of 45.5 out of 50, making them the champ of New England. Okay, but also one of the few places that has not given me a wet wipe for my hands. Guys, the craziest thing is that this journey is just beginning, so it's not too late to drop a suggestion in the comments if you haven't already. Next up on my quest for the best wings in the United States of America, I'll be trying wings in the Mid-Atlantic region. But thanks so much for watching, and just remember that even when it doesn't feel like it, it's gonna be okay. I'll see you soon.